There are moments in life when you have done everything you know how to do and nothing seems to work. You have made the calls, sent the emails, prayed, cried, begged, and waited. You have tried to fix it, force it, and figure it out, yet it feels like every door is locked. That's not failure. That's divine timing. God sometimes lets you hit the end of yourself so you can finally see the beginning of Him. You are not losing control. You are being invited to hand it over to the one who's been waiting for you to let go. You see, when we're strong, when we're confident, when everything's moving how we planned, we tend to think we're doing it on our own. We think we're the reason it's working. But when God allows everything to stop working, that's His way of showing you where your real strength comes from. He wants you to see that your plans have limits, but His power doesn't. Sometimes He won't open that door until you stop banging and start believing. It's usually when you are down to nothing that God starts doing something. When you are standing in the middle of confusion, broken in your spirit, unsure of what's next, that's the moment heaven begins to shift things around for your favor. He's not late. He's strategic. He's letting your situation reach that point where only His hand can touch it. Because when He does move, nobody will be able to take credit but Him. Think about it. The miracle doesn't come when everything's going well. It comes when there's no way out. When you have lost the job, when your health is on the line, when the bills are stacked higher than your faith, that's when God shows up and says, now watch me work. He lets things get uncomfortable so that when your breakthrough comes, you will know it wasn't luck. It was His mercy. You have got to understand that sometimes God will strip away your resources to restore your reliance. He'll pull people out of your life, shut down opportunities and close doors you thought you needed, just to remind you that He's your ultimate source. You might feel abandoned, but He's actually clearing your path. He's removing distractions so that when He steps in, there's no confusion about who delivered you. When you have done all you can do, that's when faith starts working. That's the point where you have to stop asking, why me? And start saying, God, I trust you. Because when you are weak, He's strong. When you are tired, He's faithful. When you have got nothing left to give, that's when He gives you everything you need. God's not asking you to fix it. He's asking you to surrender it. And sometimes the reason He hasn't moved yet is because He's waiting for you to get out of His way. You keep trying to write the ending, but He's the author. You are still trying to control what He already has planned. The moment you stop fighting to make it happen and start trusting that He will make it happen, that's when the turnaround begins. God steps in the second you step back and say, I can't do this without you. Waiting can feel like punishment when you have been praying for something that still hasn't happened. You start to wonder if God even heard you, if He still remembers what He promised, if your prayers are just bouncing off the ceiling. But what you don't realize is that God's silence doesn't mean absence. His delay is not denial. It's preparation. He's not ignoring you. He's orchestrating something far greater than what you asked for. Sometimes He's protecting you from what you can't yet handle because He sees what you can't see. You see, we often want blessings on demand, like everything else in our fast-paced world. We want the miracle without the maturity. We want the breakthrough without the building season. But God doesn't work like that. He's not moved by pressure. He's moved by purpose. He's not going to rush just to make you feel better. He's going to wait until the timing lines up with His divine plan, because a blessing given before its time can easily become a curse. Think about it. If God gave you everything you asked for when you wanted it, you might have destroyed it or lost it. There's a reason He delays certain doors from opening. Maybe that job would have pulled you away from your purpose. Maybe that relationship would have crushed your peace. Perhaps that opportunity would have inflated your ego. God's delay is often His way of saving you from something disguised as success. You are being refined for the weight of what's coming. When you are in the waiting season, your faith will be tested like never before. You will question everything, your timing, your worth, even your faith. But that's where you find out if you truly trust God or if you only trust Him when He's quick to respond. Waiting exposes your level of trust. Can you still believe when it looks like nothing's moving? Can you still praise when the delay stretches longer than you thought? That's where spiritual muscle is built, in the silence. There's something powerful about being patient in faith. Patience isn't sitting still doing nothing. It's standing still, believing everything. It's saying, God, I don't know when, but I know you will. Every day you wake up still believing, you are telling heaven you are not giving up. That kind of faith moves mountains. That kind of faith makes God proud. And just when you think he's forgotten, that's usually when he's about to deliver. You might not see it, but while you are waiting, God is working. He's moving pieces you can't see, aligning people you haven't met yet, and setting up opportunities that aren't even visible yet. That's why he tells you to trust the process, because what looks like a delay on earth is divine preparation in heaven. He's making sure that when it happens, everything fits perfectly. He's making sure that when he opens that door, no man can close it. And the truth is, the longer the wait, the greater the weight of the blessing. The delay builds depth in you. It teaches you patience, humility, endurance, and gratitude. When it finally comes, you won't take it lightly. You will appreciate it in ways you never would have if it came too soon. So when you find yourself in that waiting room of life, don't panic, don't rush, and don't lose faith, because what God promised is still on schedule, and his delay was never his denial. Doubt has a voice, and it loves to speak the loudest when you are closest to your breakthrough. It whispers, you are wasting your time. It tells you, you are not good enough. It's not going to work. God forgot about you. It feeds on your exhaustion, your fear, your waiting. But faith has a voice too, and it's quieter, calmer, but infinitely stronger. Faith doesn't scream, it stands. Faith says, even when I can't see it, I still believe it. The challenge is deciding which voice you will listen to when everything feels uncertain. Doubt will always look for evidence to justify itself. It will point to your past failures, your current struggles, and your unanswered prayers. It will remind you of how long you have been waiting and how many times you have fallen short. But faith doesn't need evidence. It is the evidence. Faith says, I don't walk by what I see, I walk by what I know. Because if God brought you this far, there's no way he's done with you now. You have got to start talking back to doubt instead of letting it dictate your destiny. Sometimes the biggest battle isn't external, it's internal. It's not about what people say. It's about what you say to yourself when nobody's around. That's where doubt tries to live. You're in your thoughts, in your quiet moments, in your insecurities. That's why you have got to learn to protect your mind as much as you protect your dreams. You can't feed your faith if you're constantly entertaining your fears. Stop giving doubt a seat at the table God prepared for faith. You have to learn how to speak faith even when your feelings don't line up. You might wake up scared, uncertain, or frustrated, but still say, God, I know you are working. You might not have all the answers, but you still choose to believe there's purpose in your pain. Every time you choose faith over doubt, heaven takes notice. You are showing God that your trust isn't conditional. You are saying, even if I can't see the finish line, I know you already wrote the victory. That's real faith. Trusting him when there's no visible reason to. Doubt makes you look at how big the problem is. Faith makes you look at how big God is. Doubt sees obstacles. Faith sees opportunities. Doubt focuses on the delay. Faith focuses on the promise. You can't have both leading your life. One has to be silenced, the other. And when faith starts speaking, it doesn't just change how you think. It changes how you walk, how you talk, how you handle pressure. You stop reacting out of fear and start responding out of trust. Every time you let faith speak louder, something inside you grows stronger. You start to realize that the battle you thought was against your situation was really against your mindset. The more you feed your faith through prayer, through scripture, through gratitude, the smaller your doubt becomes. The more you thank God in advance, the less power fear has to control you. Because faith doesn't wait for proof to believe, it believes until proof shows up. And the truth is, doubt will always knock, but you don't have to open the door. It's going to try to enter through your frustration, your exhaustion, and your impatience. But faith is your guard. Keep your spirit anchored in what you know, that God has never failed you. Let your faith roar louder than your fear, louder than your pain, louder than your circumstances. Because when faith speaks louder than doubt, mountains move, and what looked impossible starts becoming inevitable. So many people are waiting for everything to be perfect before they take a step of faith. They say, when I have enough money, I'll start. When I feel ready, I'll move. When everything lines up, I'll believe. But life doesn't work like that, and neither does God. God doesn't need perfect conditions to perform a miracle. He doesn't need you to have it all figured out. He doesn't need the path to be clear. All he needs is your obedience and your trust. He specializes in showing his power in the middle of your chaos. If you look through history or the word, God has never waited for perfect situations to show up. He created greatness through the broken, the unprepared, and the unqualified. He took people with nothing and made them instruments of everything. That's how he operates. He doesn't pick the polished, he picks the willing. Because if everything was perfect before he moved, you'd think the success came from your preparation instead of his provision. That's why he works in imperfection, to remind you that it's his hand that makes the difference. You might be sitting there thinking you can't move forward because the timing isn't right. But maybe the reason it doesn't feel right is because God wants to show you that his power isn't bound by timing. He can make water flow from a rock. He can open a sea when there's no bridge. He can heal a situation that's been dead for years. Stop waiting for perfect and start trusting his presence. The moment you step out in faith, that's when the supernatural starts aligning itself around your obedience. You can't expect to see miracles if you are only willing to move in comfort. Faith doesn't grow in safety, it grows in risk. Sometimes God wants you to step out on faith while the storm is still raging, while the odds are still stacked against you, while nothing looks certain. That's when your trust becomes real. You have got to learn to move in faith even when you are surrounded by doubt, to act when it doesn't make sense, to trust when logic says it's over. That's where breakthroughs are born, not in perfection, but in persistence. People around you might look at your situation and think you have lost it, that you are crazy for still believing, still trying, standing. But what they don't understand is that faith doesn't wait for validation. Faith acts while others are still analyzing. Faith moves while others are still making excuses. You don't need their approval. You need God's direction. And if he said move, then move, because obedience in imperfect conditions will take you further than hesitation in perfect ones. Sometimes God keeps the conditions imperfect on purpose. He wants to remind you that it's not your strength sustaining you, it's his grace. He'll let the odds look impossible, so when he comes through, there's no question about who made it happen. If the road were easy, your testimony wouldn't carry power. If everything made sense, your story wouldn't inspire faith in others. The very thing that feels like a limitation right now might be the exact setup for a divine manifestation. And when you finally stop waiting for perfect conditions, you will realize God has been waiting on you all along. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for participation. He wants your yes in the middle of your uncertainty. He wants your faith while everything still looks messy, because that's when his glory shines brightest, but not when everything's lined up, but when everything's out of order and he still makes it work in your favor. Loss has a way of making you question everything. You start replaying moments, trying to understand what went wrong, wondering why God allowed it to happen. You feel the sting of disappointment when the person leaves, when the opportunity slips away, when the plan falls apart. But what if what you lost wasn't meant to stay? What if that closed door wasn't rejection, but redirection? Sometimes God has to take something from your hands so he can put something greater in them. You think it's a setback, but he's really clearing space for what's next. It's hard to see that when you are in the middle of it. Your emotions are loud, your pain feels permanent, and your mind can't make sense of the sudden changes. You might feel abandoned, betrayed, or forgotten. But loss doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes it's simply a sign that you have outgrown where you are. God will let certain things fall apart because he knows if they stayed together, they'd hold you back. He's not punishing you. He's protecting your purpose. He knows what needs to leave so you can finally make room for what he's about to bring. When something or someone leaves your life, it's easy to think you are being punished, but God doesn't subtract without intention. Every loss carries a lesson, and every ending is the seed of a new beginning. The door that closed wasn't your final chapter. It was the conclusion of one that had already served its purpose. The job you lost, the friend who drifted away, the plan that failed, all of it was preparing the soil for something new to take root. But you can't receive what's next if your hands are still clinging to what was. You have to learn how to let go gracefully. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that God knows what he's doing. It means saying, I don't understand it, but I'll still trust you. When God removes something, he's not being cruel. He's being strategic. Sometimes he'll even take away what you thought you couldn't live without just to prove that he's the one keeping you standing. You may not see it now, but the loss is clearing the path for a greater assignment. The very thing you thought would destroy you is actually making room for your destiny. There's something powerful about losing everything and still choosing to trust God. That's when your faith becomes unshakable, because when you have had to rebuild from nothing, you learn what truly matters. You realize your peace doesn't come from possessions, your joy doesn't depend on people, and your strength doesn't come from circumstances. You start walking differently, talking differently, believing differently. You stop chasing what's left and start preparing for what's coming. That's how God grows you, through the pain that pushes you toward purpose. And don't forget, sometimes God removes people because they can't go where you are going. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next season. Some people were only assigned to your life for a chapter, not the whole. Sometimes we mistake fear for wisdom. We say, I'm just waiting for the right time. But most of the time, that's not wisdom. That's hesitation. Faith doesn't wait for the perfect conditions. Faith creates them. God won't reveal the whole path until you take the first step. You have been praying for doors to open, but doors don't open for people who never walk toward them. The moment you move in faith, heaven starts to move in your direction. God can't steer a parked car. He needs motion. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop asking for permission and start walking in purpose. You start realizing that faith isn't about knowing what's next. It's about trusting who's leading. You don't have to see the full staircase to take the first step. You just have to believe that if God said go, he's already gone before you to prepare the way. He's not asking you to have it all figured out. He's just asking you to take one step and then another until your faith starts paving the path forward. Every person who ever achieved something great had to move before they were ready. They had to act while afraid, trust while unsure, and keep going while confused. Faith isn't the absence of fear. It's the courage to move through it. You might be scared, unprepared, and uncertain, but God doesn't need your confidence. He needs your commitment. He'll handle the results if you handle the obedience. The miracle is never in the waiting. It's in the walking. You will never see the fullness of his promise until you take that leap. It's easy to say you trust God when things are stable, but faith is tested in the moments that stretch you. When he tells you to move and you don't know how it's going to work, that's when your faith is proven. When you start doing the work without seeing results, that's when he starts building endurance in you. Every act of obedience, and no matter how small, is a statement that says, God, I believe you will meet me on the other side, because faith without movement is a dream. Faith with movement is destiny. And if you keep waiting for the feeling of readiness, you will never move. Readiness is a myth. Obedience is what activates faith. You don't have to know how it's going to happen. You just have to trust that it will. Stop talking about what you're going to do and start doing what you said you would. God honors movement, not excuses. When you take that step of faith, even if it's shaky, heaven sees it as strength. Because faith in motion, that's where the impossible starts becoming possible. Life will hit you harder than you ever expected. You will face storms that shake you to your core, heartbreaks that make your knees weak, and challenges that feel impossible to overcome. But the truth is, God never wastes a struggle. Every trial, every hardship, every obstacle is designed to strengthen you, to stretch you, and to prepare you for what's coming. Struggle isn't a punishment. It's a classroom. He's teaching you lessons that comfort could never teach and patience that prosperity could never build. When you are in the middle of a struggle, it feels like you are alone, like nobody understands, like the world has forgotten you. But that's when God is closest. It's easy to trust him when life is smooth and the path is clear. The real faith test is believing when life is messy and your hope feels distant. Every tear, every sleepless night, every fight you didn't see coming is molding you into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Struggle is proof that growth is happening, even if you can't see it yet. Think about how iron sharpens iron. Just like metal becomes stronger through fire, your spirit becomes stronger through struggle. God uses pressure to remove impurities in your character, to break habits that hold you back, and to build perseverance. He doesn't want you to stay soft and fragile. He wants you battle ready for the next assignment. The pain isn't permanent, but the strength it builds lasts a lifetime. Every hardship is a divine workout for your soul. Struggles also teach you empathy. When you have been knocked down, when you have been misunderstood, when you have had to fight silently just to survive, you gain the ability to encourage others. God doesn't just strengthen you for your sake. He strengthens you so you can be a source of strength for someone else. The lessons learned in pain become your platform to help others, and your testimony becomes a roadmap for someone who's walking a path you once traveled. It's easy to get bitter when life hits hard. You start asking, why me? Why now? What did I do wrong? But bitterness only weakens you. Strength comes when you choose to see your struggles as intentional, when you trust that there's a purpose behind every difficulty. God isn't punishing you. He's perfecting you. The things that feel heavy are actually heavily designed to make you ready for the victory that's coming. Your endurance today is preparing you for your elevation tomorrow. Struggles also reveal the depth of your faith. It's easy to be grateful when everything goes right, but what about when doors close, people leave, and circumstances crush your spirit? That's when true faith shows itself. Your reaction in hard times proves what kind of foundation you have built. Every time you choose to trust instead of despair, to pray instead of quit, to hope instead of complain, God is strengthening you. He's building a backbone in you that can withstand and storms that would break others. Struggle is temporary, but the strength you gain lasts forever. What challenges you today equip you for tomorrow's victories. What tries to stop you actually sets you up for an unstoppable comeback. Every battle you face isn't just a moment in time. It's preparation for a legacy. God is shaping you through your trials, and the very struggles that make you cry today will be the ones that make you shine brighter tomorrow. There will be people in your life who look at your circumstances and decide you are finished before you even have a chance. They will shake their heads, roll their eyes, and tell you that your dream is impossible. They might laugh when you fall, whisper doubts when you succeed, and walk away when you need support the most. But their opinion does not define your destiny. Just because someone counts you out doesn't mean God has finished counting you in. Their disbelief is not a reflection of your potential. It's a reflection of their limitation. The world loves to underestimate people. They assume that failure is final, that struggle equals defeat, and that setbacks mean the end. But God's ways are higher than human understanding. He doesn't see your limitations. He sees your purpose. He doesn't count what people see. He counts your heart, your faith, and your obedience. Just because someone can't envision your breakthrough doesn't mean it isn't coming. God specializes in taking the overlooked, the underestimated, and the rejected and turning them into examples of His power. When others doubt you, it can be tempting to doubt yourself. You might start questioning your abilities, your worth, or your calling. That's why this is where faith matters the most. God wants you to believe in His plan even when nobody else does. He wants you to keep going when every door seems closed, to keep speaking life over your dreams when everyone else is silent. Your faith in Him must be louder than their disbelief. Because the moment you stop depending on their approval and start trusting His provision, you step into your divine purpose. History is full of examples where God used the counted out to change the world. The person who was rejected from every school got the scholarship that changed their life. The entrepreneur who was turned down by every investor built the company that inspired millions. The individual who was abandoned by friends and family became a beacon of hope for countless others. God doesn't need a crowd to validate you. He only needs your obedience. When He counts you in, nobody can count you out. You have got to stop trying to prove yourself to people who will never believe. Their doubt isn't your job to fix. Their disbelief isn't your failure to overcome. Your responsibility is to keep moving, to keep trusting, to keep walking in the purpose God has placed in your heart. Every time you step forward, despite their doubts, you are proving something. not to them, but to God. That's the kind of faith that shifts circumstances, that changes destinies, and that brings the impossible to life. Sometimes God even uses the very people who counted you out as witnesses to his glory. The ones who doubted you, who laughed at your struggles, who walked away, they will be the ones forced to watch when God steps in. They will see doors open that they said would never open, opportunities appear that they said were impossible, and blessings flow that they said were out of reach. God doesn't just prove them wrong. He glorifies himself through your breakthrough. Your value is not determined by those who can't see it. Your timing is not dictated by their schedule, and your success is not limited by their imagination. God counts you in at the perfect time, in the perfect way, for the perfect purpose. Their disbelief is temporary. His faithfulness is eternal. When you stay focused on him, the same hands that were raised against you in doubt will have no choice but to witness your victory unfold. When God plants a vision in your heart, he also provides everything you need to see it come to life. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way because you are staring at your bank account, your resources, or your current situation. You are looking at what you don't have instead of what God has already promised. But a vision from God is never a mistake. It is never out of reach. He will always supply what is necessary, even if it doesn't look like it yet. You just have to trust that the provision is coming in his timing, not yours. Many people give up on their dreams because they don't see how the pieces will fit together. They look at the road ahead and panic because it seems impossible. But God never calls you to something without making a way. He doesn't give a task without equipping you. If he's placed a vision in your heart, he has already aligned resources, connections, and opportunities that you haven't seen yet. What feels impossible today is already in motion behind the scenes, waiting for you to walk in obedience. Provision rarely shows up the way we expect it to. Sometimes it comes as people, sometimes as knowledge, sometimes as financial resources, and sometimes as unexpected doors opening. But it always comes at the right time. That's why patience is so important. You can't rush God's process. You might see a need and feel desperate, but that's when faith becomes crucial. Trust that God will provide exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, and exactly how he planned it, even if it's not how you imagined it. Faith without action will never activate provision. You can't just sit and wait for miracles to fall from the sky. You have to move in the direction of your vision. God provides for those who step out in faith. If you refuse to take the first step, you will never see how he is orchestrating everything on your behalf. Your obedience is what unlocks the resources he's already arranged. Every step you take toward your vision is a step that makes the provision tangible. Sometimes the provision feels delayed, and that's where frustration tries to creep in. You start wondering if God forgot, if the vision was too big, if you misunderstood your calling. But delay is not denial. God's timing is perfect, and he is aligning things in ways you cannot see. He will never leave you stranded or unprepared. Your vision is not too big for him, and your need is not too great. What feels like waiting is actually preparation, and what feels like lack is actually the buildup for overflow. The people who doubted you will never see the unseen work that God is doing in your favor. They won't understand that every setback, every closed door, and every challenge has been part of the provision process. God is bigger than any obstacle. He will not only provide the resources, but also the wisdom, the timing, and the strategy to accomplish your vision. When it happens, it will be undeniable. And it wasn't by your own strength. It was divine provision. And the reality is you can't manufacture what God has already promised. You can't shortcut his plan. The key is to trust him completely, walk in obedience, and take every step he's guiding you to take. When you do, you will see that the provision was never in question. It was just waiting for your faith to meet it. God always provides, always equips, and always delivers for the vision he has placed in your heart. Breakthrough doesn't come from wishing, hoping, or talking about it. It comes from doing what God tells you to do. You can pray all day, fast all week, and speak positive words, but until you act on what He's instructed, you are standing still. Obedience is the key that unlocks every door God has prepared for you. It might not make sense to your mind. It might feel uncomfortable to your flesh, and it might go against your own timing. But that's exactly where breakthroughs are born. In obedience, when everything inside you is resisting. Many people wait for the perfect moment to step out, but God rarely works in perfect moments. He works in moments when you choose to obey, even when it feels impossible, inconvenient, or intimidating. Obedience is not always about feeling ready. It's about trusting the one who called you. When you follow His instruction, you align yourself with His power. That's when things start moving that you could never make happen on your own. God honors action, and He magnifies the steps of those who choose to follow His guidance. Obedience also requires humility. It means letting go of pride and self-will and recognizing that God's way is greater than yours. Sometimes you will be asked to do something that doesn't seem logical, or to wait when you feel ready to move. That's where faith is tested. Obedience doesn't depend on understanding. It depends on trust. The moment you surrender your reasoning and take action, God begins to release a breakthrough. It may not look like what you imagine, but it is exactly what you need to step into your destiny. The problem is many people confuse action with obedience. They rush ahead on their own, doing things in their own strength instead of waiting for God's instruction. That's not obedience. That's movement without alignment. True obedience requires listening, waiting, and responding exactly as God leads. When you do that, you release His supernatural favor in your life. He will open doors, create opportunities, and align people and circumstances in ways that defy human logic. Breakthrough always comes where obedience meets faith. Obedience also builds character. Every time you do what God tells you to do, even when it's hard, you grow stronger, wiser, and more mature. You learn to trust Him not just for results, but for guidance. You learn patience, perseverance, and resilience. And the more you obey, the more God entrusts you with greater assignments. Breakthrough is rarely just a single event. It's a process of growth that starts with simple obedience and culminates in something far bigger than you imagined. Sometimes the breakthrough you are waiting for depends entirely on the obedience you have been avoiding. Maybe God has been nudging you to let go of bitterness, to forgive someone, to take a risk, or to step out in faith, and you have hesitated. That hesitation can stall the blessing for months or even years. God doesn't delay because He's faithful. He delays until your heart, your mind, and your hands are ready to act in alignment with His will. Your next big moment depends on your willingness to obey right now. Breakthroughs aren't passive. They are not random. They are the result of doing what God asked you to do, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. Every step of obedience compounds like a domino effect, creating conditions for favor, provision, and opportunity to flow. The breakthrough you are praying for starts with a single act of trust, a single step of faith, and a single decision to obey. God honors obedience, and that's how the impossible becomes possible in your life. One of the biggest traps we fall into is thinking we need to understand every detail before we move. We want clarity, a roadmap, and proof that everything will work out exactly as we hope. But life doesn't operate that way, and neither does God. He asks us to trust Him even when the picture isn't clear. Trying to understand everything before you act often leads to paralysis. You stay stuck in analysis while God is waiting for you to step out in faith and let Him handle the unseen parts. We crave control because we're afraid of disappointment. We want to know the outcome before we invest, the route before we start, and the people before we trust. But God rarely gives a complete blueprint. He gives direction, a calling, and faith to sustain you. And then He asks you to move forward anyway. That's the tension of faith, believing without seeing, trusting without understanding, and walking when the path is uncertain. The moment you stop demanding full comprehension is the moment you start walking in obedience. The problem with trying to understand everything is that it limits your growth. You are trying to fit God into your box instead of letting him expand your capacity. When you insist on knowing the how, the when, and the why, you rob yourself of the supernatural. God works beyond human logic, and breakthroughs often appear in ways you could never predict. The more you chase understanding, the less you chase his will. Faith calls you to step out even when your mind says, I don't get it. Sometimes the greatest opportunities are disguised as confusion. What looks like chaos, contradiction, or delay might actually be God rearranging your life for something far greater. If you wait until you understand, you will miss the divine appointments, the unexpected blessings, and the miracles that only happen when you act without having all the answers. God is always ahead of you, and your job is not to figure him out, but to follow him faithfully, even when you don't have all the pieces. Letting go of the need to understand everything also frees you from unnecessary anxiety. When you demand answers for every situation, you carry a weight that God never intended for you to bear. Your mind becomes a battlefield of doubt, fear, and overthinking. But when you surrender the need to know everything, you release peace into your spirit. You stop wrestling with things outside your control and start trusting in the one who holds it all together. Understanding is not the prerequisite for faith. Faith is the prerequisite for understanding. There's also power in mystery. God's plans are often beyond what we can imagine. He's working behind the scenes, arranging people, opportunities, and timing in ways that we couldn't orchestrate ourselves. If everything were obvious, you'd think you did it all alone. By keeping some things hidden, God ensures that the glory goes to him and that you learn tamchits. A walk by faith, not by sight. Stop trying to rationalize miracles. They aren't meant to be explained, only experienced. And the key is trust. Trust that God sees what you don't see. Trust that his timing is perfect. Trust that the steps you are taking, even when they don't make sense, are exactly the steps he's orchestrating for your destiny. Stop exhausting yourself trying to understand every turn, every delay, and every challenge. The moment you stop demanding answers and start trusting his wisdom, your heart opens to breakthroughs that logic could never produce, and your spirit begins to move in alignment with his plan. Too many people limit God with their own imagination. They look at their circumstances, their past failures, or their lack of resources and decide what is possible. They create a box around their dreams and say, this is as far as I can go. But God's plan is never meant to fit into human expectations. It is bigger, higher, and more powerful than anything you can conceive. What you think is the end of the line is often just the beginning of what God is preparing for you. You see, God doesn't just meet you at your level. He elevates you. He doesn't just give you enough to survive. He gives you abundance to thrive. Sometimes he allows challenges and delays, not to stop you, but to stretch you so that when the blessing comes, you can handle it. If his plan was something small, it wouldn't require your faith, your perseverance, or your growth. That's why breakthroughs often arrive in ways that surpass your understanding, leaving you in awe of his power. You see, God doesn't just meet you at your level. He elevates you. He doesn't just give you enough to survive. He gives you abundance to thrive. Sometimes he allows challenges and delays, not to stop you, but to stretch you so that when the blessing comes, you can handle it. If his plan was something small, it wouldn't require your faith, your perseverance, or your growth. That's why breakthroughs often arrive in ways that surpass your understanding, leaving you in awe of his power. Faith is believing that God can do more than you can see. It's trusting that the impossible is possible because he is involved. Your mind will try to calculate, limit, and rationalize, but God's ways are not bound by reason. What he has planned for you will often arrive in forms you never expected. Opportunities, relationships, resources, or miracles that go beyond anything you could have asked for. That's why it's dangerous to try to define the outcome. God's vision always surpasses human understanding. Sometimes the plan feels slow, and that's intentional. God doesn't rush perfection. He wants every step, every season and every struggle to build a foundation strong enough for the greatness ahead. If the blessing came too soon, you wouldn't be able to handle the weight of it. The longer the preparation, the greater the manifestation. His plan is always bigger than the moment, bigger than your fears, and bigger than the doubts that try to fill your mind. Remember, his plan will always exceed your timing and your understanding. You may have prayed, worked, and hoped for years without seeing the full picture, but that doesn't mean the plan isn't moving forward. Every delay, every detour, every difficulty is orchestrated to set the stage for something extraordinary. What God has in store for you is far greater than anything you could imagine, far beyond what you deserve, and far bigger than what you think is possible. It's easy to praise God when everything is going right. The bills are paid, the doors are opening, and life feels smooth. But real faith is tested when the storm is raging and the path seems uncertain. That's when praising God becomes more than an act, it becomes a weapon. Praise shifts your perspective from focusing on the problem to focusing on the provider. It's a declaration that you trust him even when the results haven't shown up yet, and that trust it becomes the fuel that carries you through the process. When you praise during difficult seasons, you are acknowledging that God is still in control. You may not understand why things are happening the way they are, but your praise says, I know you see what I cannot see, and I believe you are working all things for my good. It's a powerful statement of faith because it doesn't depend on circumstances. Praise aligns your heart with God's will, and that alignment invites his supernatural presence to work in ways you cannot accomplish on your own. Praise also strengthens your spirit. The enemy loves to make you feel defeated, discouraged, and overwhelmed. He whispers lies that the struggle is permanent, that your prayers are unheard, and that your dreams are too far gone. But praise breaks those chains. Every word of gratitude and worship lifts your spirit above fear, doubt, and despair. It reminds you that God is bigger than your problems and that your breakthrough is not dependent on your understanding, but on his power. When you maintain a heart of praise through trials, you create an environment for miracles to manifest. God responds to joy in the midst of pain, faith in the midst of uncertainty, and worship in the midst of waiting. It's not the noise of the world or the actions of others that change your situation. It's the posture of your heart before God. Praise signals that you trust him, that you refuse to be shaken, and that you believe the process is producing a purpose you cannot yet see. Sometimes the process is long and patience feels impossible. The bills stack up, relationships are tested, and opportunities seem delayed. But praise gives you strength to endure. It reminds you that your journey is not defined by the timeline of man, but by the promises of God. Every act of worship and hardship is like a seed planted in faith, and every seed will produce a harvest in its season. Keeping your heart grateful, even when life is messy, sets the stage for blessings that exceed your imagination. And the most important truth is that praise is not dependent on what you see, hear, or feel. It's a declaration of trust in the unseen, a choice to honor God even when life is hard, and a commitment to keep your focus on his faithfulness. By praising him through the process, you invite his presence, activate his favor, and position yourself to receive the breakthrough that he has already planned. Praise is the bridge between your struggle and your victory, and it carries you closer to what God has promised. Life moves in seasons, and each season is carefully designed by God to shape you into who you are meant to be. There are seasons of growth, seasons of waiting, seasons of struggle, and seasons of harvest. Each one has a purpose, whether you understand it or not. Sometimes we get frustrated when a season feels long or difficult, but that's often when the most important lessons are being taught. God uses every season to prepare, refine, and strengthen you for what is next. The waiting seasons are some of the hardest to endure. You might feel stagnant, overlooked, or forgotten. You see others moving forward, achieving their goals, and wondering why you are still stuck. But the waiting is not wasted. It is during these seasons that patience, faith, and perseverance are built. God is not absent. He is working behind the scenes, aligning opportunities, preparing your heart, and shaping your character so that when your your moment comes, you are ready to walk into it with strength and confidence. Seasons of struggle are also intentional. They challenge you, push you to your limits, and force you to rely on God like never before. Struggles reveal what's really inside you, your resilience, your faith, and your determination. They expose weakness so it can be corrected, and they test courage so it can grow. No struggle is meaningless. Even the hardships that feel unbearable are, shaping you into someone who can handle greater responsibility, bigger blessings, and a life that glorifies God beyond measure. Seasons of joy and harvest are proof that God's timing is perfect. When you finally see doors open, blessings flow, and dreams realized, it's not just about reward, it's about the journey that brought you there. The preparation, the waiting, and the challenges all served a purpose. They refined your character, strengthened your faith, and deepened your understanding of God's faithfulness. That's why no season should be wasted or ignored. Every stage of life is an opportunity to grow closer to God and align with His plan. It's also important to recognize that seasons change and no season lasts forever. The difficulties that seem unbearable today will eventually give way to breakthroughs. The victories you are experiencing now will eventually be followed by new challenges that test your growth. Seasons are not permanent. They are transitional. Learning to embrace and respect the purpose of each season is crucial for your spiritual, emotional, and personal development. God moves in patterns and understanding that allows you to trust His timing and His process. God is never idle in any season of your life. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, He is actively shaping, preparing, and positioning you for the next chapter. No season is wasted, no challenge is meaningless, and no delay is accidental. Every season has a purpose to teach you, test you, strengthen you, and prepare you for the greatness God has planned. Understanding this allows you to walk with patience, faith, and confidence, knowing that His hand is always guiding you. Timing is everything, but it's not your timing. It's God's timing. You may feel ready, prepared, and even desperate for a breakthrough, but God has a perfect schedule that you cannot see. He knows when the world is ready, when the resources are aligned, and when your heart is prepared to handle the blessing. Impatience can lead to mistakes, missteps, and missed opportunities. That's why you must trust His timing, because God always makes it happen exactly when it's supposed to. Sometimes it feels like God is slow, like your prayers are unheard, or like the answers are taking too long. But what seems like a delay is actually preparation. God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating circumstances, people, and opportunities in ways you cannot comprehend. Every setback, every no, and every closed door is positioning you for the perfect moment. When He finally acts, it will be undeniable that it was His hand all along, not coincidence or human effort. Faith is tested in the waiting. You will face moments when doubt whispers, when fear threatens, and when despair seems close. But God asks you to stand firm, to remain faithful, and to trust that He is working everything out for your good. The breakthrough might not look like you imagined, and it might come in a way that surprises you, but God's timing is perfect. He will make it happen when everything is aligned for maximum impact and lasting success. God's timing is never early, never late, and never flawed. He knows when your heart can handle the blessing, when your faith has matured, and when your life is ready to carry the responsibility of what He is about to release. Sometimes waiting is not punishment, it's preparation. It is in the moments of patience and perseverance that God refines your character, strengthens your resolve, and builds the foundation necessary for a breakthrough that will exceed your expectation. Ions, while you wait, don't stop moving in obedience. God's timing does not mean passivity. You are still responsible for doing your part, for walking in faith, and for preparing yourself to receive. The steps you take while waiting are what position you for the moment when everything comes together. Your effort combined with His perfect timing creates a divine convergence that cannot be stopped. That's why the breakthrough always arrives fully formed, complete, and life-changing. Patience is hard because human nature wants instant results. You see others moving forward, opportunities happening for someone else, and you wonder why it's taking so long for you. But God's plan is personal, precise, and perfect. He will not rush or delay unnecessarily. Every season of waiting is part of a process to ensure that when it happens in the best possible way, without compromise, without risk, and with glory for His name. The timing is intentional, and the result will be worth the wait. And the most important truth to hold on to is that God will always make it happen. Your breakthrough is not a matter of chance or luck. It's a matter of His promise and His plan. When the time comes, what seemed impossible will become inevitable. Doors that were closed will open, blessings that were delayed will arrive, and the dreams He placed in your heart will manifest. Trust that His timing is perfect, His plan is flawless, and that He will make it happen in the fullness of time,